My favourite part of doing a podcast, without any doubt, is getting to connect with and make friends with such wonderful people. That's certainly the case with my next guest, George Taktak. George got into the world of mental health in quite an unusual way. He actually invented technology that allowed him to communicate with his granddad, who could no longer speak due to his Alzheimer's disease. He then set up the organisation How Mental, which boasts an incredible 800,000 followers and does an awful amount of good in the mental health space. Our conversation today is a big one. We discuss how our economic measures such as GDP may not be the best thing for our society anymore. We discuss that George wants to create the extinction rebellion of mental health. And we even discuss what our purpose really is in life. So yeah, it's a big one, no messing about. So sit back, relax, enjoy. George, welcome to the sofa. So nice to have you here.
Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
No worries. We met recently at a conference and I've been looking forward to this ever since. But let's get straight into it. Where did your journey start in the world of mental health?
So I did not intend on working in mental health at all. Used to work in finance, consultancy. I mean, that was the way that my dad especially had programmed me. So he was like, that's your direction. But when I realized that wasn't for me, I was looking around at the time and my granddad was suffering with Alzheimer's disease. And I don't know if you know much about Alzheimer's, and obviously it affects everyone differently because it degrades the neural pathways in your brain. So it can do all kinds of crazy things. But in his case, he actually couldn't speak anymore. And I was floored by the fact that it not only affected him, but it affected everyone around him. So it affected my grandma, who became a full-time carer. It affected my mom, she was incredibly depressed, and it affected me too. And I wanted to do something to help. And so I realized that actually, because he couldn't speak, we could no longer stay in touch. I couldn't just pick up the phone and say hello. So I wanted to find a new way for us to communicate. And I realized the way that we communicated in person was through touch itself. So it was a hug, it was holding his hand or giving him a kiss. Yeah. And so I found a way to use vibrations and manipulate vibration patterns to allow us to actually share a moment with each other whenever we were apart. So, I would send one vibration his way and then he'd send a vibration my way. And then I knew that he was there with me at that same moment in time, without any words or without anything else.
How did you pass the vibration? How did it specifically work?
So the simple idea was literally like I send one vibration, so it goes like, let's say, zzz, 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 and then it gets to him. And then once he comes online, it might change. So it'll be like, da-dun, da-dun, da-dun. So you know that you're there with him. And that was just like the very simple version. Like eventually I developed a few different ways to communicate. So to help people share different kinds of touch. So like a hug or a kiss or, to hold someone's hand through your phone. So to do that, you'd basically take your phone, you press it to your chest. And in that moment, you're actually unconsciously hugging yourself. But it releases the vibrations and it gives you some sound. So it's a really immersive experience. And then I patented that language and I got super obsessed with it. And that was my first experience in mental health. And, at the time it was really hard because I didn't know anything about it, but I learned pretty quick. But what I found most difficult was that actually other people in the space weren't really accepting of me. It's like I didn't have a degree in psychology, or I didn't have, I wasn't a doctor. So, and at the time as well, they said, technology, like that's not really for mental health. So it was kind of a baptism of fire getting through that. But yeah, that's how I kind of first started.
Wow. Simplicity is beauty.
Yeah.
And your journey then led to you starting How Mental. Can you just tell us a little bit about your amazing organization and what the sort of time frame was there as well?
Yeah, for sure. So was working on this vibration-based language for about 4 or 5 years. And then one day I was in my co-working space and a friend of mine approached me and she said, George, listen, I know you work in mental health. I am feeling super depressed. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know what I need. And do I just go on Mind's website? Is that it? And it struck me that because I had now been immersed in the sector for 4 or 5 years, I'd learned everything about it. I knew what was happening. I knew who the different people were who were creating different things, different organizations, also how to go about getting support, what kind of support is sort of, most valued right now. What are we talking about in terms of innovations going ahead, and what are the latest topics? So you get the whole privilege of being in the sector, but everyday people have no idea where to go.
Sure.
They've had no education, not 1 second of being, explained even what depression is, or what anxiety is, or what anything is, even what mental health is.
Sure.
So I was like, well, this is completely fucked up. Because I could make the coolest vibration language in the world, but if no one ever heard about it, what's the point?
Exactly.
So, and also I thought of all the other people that I knew who were making incredible things, and I was like, it's a shame, because they spent so long, getting the clinical validation, putting their blood, sweat, and tears into something, but if no one's ever gonna hear about it, again, what's the point? So I got really angry, and that tends to be where my best ideas and sort of actions come from. And so I started this community on Instagram to connect up the mental health sector. And, whether you're people that, individual people that care about mental health, or want to take care of yourself, or if you're an organization that's providing support, I wanted to just bring every person together into one place where we could unite our voices instead of having them sort of fragmented and separate here, there, and everywhere. And where we could just, show that we're all on the same page, and also create one accessible place for people to go and find the support they need. So we consider ourselves a movement, and we've been growing, really rapidly, especially over the past couple of years during COVID. So we grew, I think, from 80,000 followers just before COVID to 500,000 followers after the first year. And now we're on about 800,000 followers on Instagram. So it's pretty crazy. And we reach, I think, about 14 million people a month. And we do it with a lot of flair, I think, because, I've been through my own experiences of depression, suicidality, those kinds of things. And so there's a lot of humor that we know is really important to bring to the topic of mental health, because everyone goes through it. Everyone is on their journey, and we need to bring some kind of levity and make it genuinely relatable for people to understand that this is something which we can all be at some point suicidal. We probably are all on some level of the spectrum of suicidality. And so it's just about, understanding it and processing it in a way that is everyday. And so, you go on our page and you'll see it's very fun, it's very light, it's very creative. That's what we kind of do to make the topic of mental health, to make the tools, to make the community something which people want to be part of. And I think that's why it's grown.
Amazing. I have to commend you on the content, and it is done with flair. I'd seen a lot of How Mental's content before I met you at the conference, and you are really a movement, but you're also a one-stop shop for mental health in general. And I would advise anyone who's feeling a little bit lost, or even if you're not feeling a little bit lost, to go and have a look and just see what's out there. And I think what's really interesting that you said, if people don't know where things are, they can't access them, then what's the point? That's then compounded by the very nature of depression and anxiety and mental health. If you're feeling depressed or anxious, it's even harder to find these things. And that's why I think it's such a great initiative. You said you were a movement, and you said something really interesting to me when you first had a chat over Zoom. You said you want to make How Mental the extinction rebellion of mental health. So tell me a little bit more about that.
It's kind of a line that I'm never really sure I want to use, because I think people have different opinions on Extinction Rebellion and what they do. But I think mental health needs a movement. I think our well-being needs to be the global priority, because in this world that we currently live in, so my background, like I said, I used to work in finance and consultancy, but what I studied was economics. And the way that I made economics interesting for myself was to really understand, why the economy is the way that it is. Why do we have money? Why do is it really evil? What's going on here? And why is the world the way that it is in relation to the economy? And I think a lot of us take for granted the fact that the economy even exists. We want to pretend like that thing is way too complex. It just happens, but it doesn't just happen, and it's the way it instructs the way that we live on a continuous basis. So to be able to really change things, we need to change the way that we're measuring success. And right now, the way that we measure success as a society is by GDP. So GDP is gross domestic product, and that's basically a long way of saying a measure of how much money we spend. So if we're just measuring how much money we spend all the time, we could be spending money on a new pair of shoes or on helping homeless people. And in either circumstance, it's just as valid, because it just adds to the amount of money we spend, and then we think that we're doing better.
Sure.
And
GDP grows.
Exactly. The economy is better and everyone's suddenly happier. No. There's a difference. And if we're only able to see life through the lens of the economy and through GDP, we are going to continue to face the same issues that we have, whether it's in the environment or whether it's in homelessness or whether it's in mental health. So, that's why I commend Extinction Rebellion for, wanting to make the environment the priority. I believe that well-being needs to be the priority, because well-being is such an inclusive topic that it includes the environment, it includes the economy, and it includes our mental health.
Yeah, and I would say that well-being in general, before that we rectify this pandemic of mental health that we're having, before people are singing from the same hymn sheet and in a good enough place mentally to put their willpower into other things like the environment, you're really going to struggle. If people are unhappy and people don't have the right support mentally, the last thing on your list to do is to go and take the recycling out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's obviously simplifying things massively. But if we are more harmonious in how we treat each other, if we're happy in ourselves, then sure, we can try and put more time and effort into actually fixing the climate crisis as well.
100%.
And they don't have to be apart. I'm not saying one has to happen first. We can do them side by side. But of course, I think I really understand your point there.
Yeah, that's exactly where I begin from. I'm like, either I would be focusing on the environment or mental health. But I personally believe if you focus on people's mental health and well-being, everything else will follow. So, but yeah, I think it's a testament to the point that you mentioned earlier as well. If people are not feeling well, they're just not going to want to do anything else. And it's just going to make, finding support or anything else so much harder. So instead of us going down that negative cycle or a vicious cycle, whatever you want to call it, of depression and of everything else, we need people to be well in the first place, to solve these things.
Okay, so there's another way then. There's another way to measure, there's another metric of success that we can switch to. George, how does that work?
So this is what I've been working on recently. And essentially, the idea is that instead of having the daily weather report, you'd have the daily well-being report. And so, every day, the way that it would work is, every day, what happens is we all have an app, and on this app, we would be able to say how we're feeling. So let's say everyone sets their feeling once a day, or as many times as they like a day. That data gets collated, aggregated, and averaged out, and turned into an overall well-being score. So that score gets shown on the news. And so firstly, it's a score that is a tangible measure for how people are feeling. And secondly, it's on the news, so it gets shown to everyone. It's given that kind of credibility and importance and accessibility as well. And I think, the best thing about it is that it's up to us to control our destiny and control our future. We all have a hand to play in it. So your feelings matter. If you're feeling really down, that matters. That feeling can contribute to the overall score of the planet. And so it starts to realign our way of thinking in general. Like if you know that maybe holding the door open for someone instead of just letting it slam in their face could help their well-being, you would do it, because the overall score is about this. So, and whether it's that or whether it's a government that's realigning its budget, maybe they say, okay, maybe we should invest more in education because education around well-being would be really important. So that's the idea, is to create a tangible metric for well-being and see how it plays out.
What would be the consequences of a country not doing well for this? How would a country move forward, for example, and what would be the negative effects? What would stop a country just disregarding their score?
So the consequences for a country not doing well is complete punishment. We will never talk to them ever again. And no, we accept that some places are not going to be doing that well. And it's just a place to start from, really. I think at the end of the day, if we're not aware of where we're at, it's really hard to take actions. And honestly, I don't blame these countries or these people, because we've all been telling ourselves these stories of who we are, what we have to do, and the way that things should be for a really long time. And we've discredited well-being as a kind of side issue for a really long time. And so, the consequences are that these countries will hopefully receive even more support in the specific ways that they need to be able to improve their well-being score. That's all there is.
And you're not suggesting this would fully replace GDP, and would there be a loss of financial markets? How would that be a transition period? How would that actually work?
Well-being, improving people's well-being has been shown to improve their productivity. So it actually will improve GDP. So nothing's gonna it's not like suddenly everyone's gonna stop working, or like there will be no money. No, this should help us to be more productive, to create more wealth, and actually to empower all kinds of things, and hopefully also even enabled the financial markets to align with well-being and to consider it when they are acting, because we know that the financial crisis happened because of these mortgages that were given out and people not being able to afford them. So how do we consider well-being whilst also even in the financial landscape? Maybe when we're looking at giving people mortgages, we also consider giving them some therapy. That would be nice.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, information and knowledge is power, right? And I think what it may do is really shift the emphasis and priorities for governments towards well-being. So, for example, I'm thinking straight away, there's been a lot of evidence that the 4-day working week works, but there's a lot of pushback on that, even though we see that it improves productivity. And that's coming in slowly in some areas. I think I heard Scotland were trialing it out, and there are other countries that have done so. But if suddenly you have a well-being score and a government and a country can see how well they're doing, and they think, okay, we've heard that the 4-day working week improves productivity, but it will also likely improve well-being by a lot more. Maybe our well-being score would benefit from that, then we'll employ that. Let's trial it out. I think that's really cool. How Mental does a great job at putting out resources for people and highlighting where people should go. What's your view on how the current state of affairs are with resources for people's mental health?
There are lots of people out there who are creating amazing resources, tools, different forms of support for people. I genuinely think that there is a lot out there. The problem, for the most part, is that most people don't know how to communicate that to people. And because of that, we still live in this kind of world where a lot of people just don't get that mental health relates to them. So I think that the main issue that we're facing is one of communication. But I also think that even in terms of the support itself, we are slightly hampered by the fact that the things that get investment are the things that are normally like safe, you know? So when COVID happened, there started to be a lot more investment in mental health in general, also by venture capitalists and different kinds of funding organizations that really value profit over anything else. So it's like a whole new swathe of mental health support tools, but which by the way, like, you know, they have that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Like, you know, like there's more support tools, but at the same time, they're not going to invest in things that are not already proven. And so we're kind of dealing with a lot of tools that are generally not that different from each other.
Okay.
You know, not necessarily that innovative. And, you know, like, I'm not saying that I'm God's gift to innovation. And I really think, like, you know, 21-year-old George coming up with like a way to share a hug through their phone, you know, like was not, like, I don't think that's that remarkable. I think that the problem is that we don't really encourage innovation in this space. We're really scared of it. And I think rightly so in one way, because obviously we don't want to damage people's mental health even further. So, you know, we'd rather go the safe route. But at the end of the day, like, we need more innovation. We need people to be thinking differently. It's just more fun, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, people need to see that there's something fun about this thing, and that they want to engage with. And it can still have the same kind of like intent and accreditation and credibility and power. But I think that we just need a little bit more diverse thinking. And also, you know, we were speaking earlier about psychedelics and things like that. Like, you know, there's a lot of investment going on there. And I think that there's a lot of, you know, amazing potential. It's just a matter of like, how long are these things going to take? You know, people are suffering, and, you know, we need new solutions. So yeah, so I think I'm sorry, I can't like wrap that up with like a neat little bow, but like that's the kind of general state, you know, things are good, but they could be better.
Sure. And there's a lot out there. And I guess How Mental are trying to fix a problem that people don't get to see what is out there. Would you also think that maybe we treat mental health on a very individual level? Do you think that we are trying to put too much onus on the individual to improve their mental health?
Majorly. Yeah. Like, I mean, there's only so much we can do for ourselves. Like, I grew up in an environment where my parents were not the most emotionally savvy individuals. And so, you know, when you're confronted with an environment which is super toxic on a continuous basis, there's only so much you can do, you know? There's only so much resilience you can have. And at the end of the day, like, we need to be able to work together in this, because whether it's the people around us and our communities that need to recalibrate to be able to empower our well-being, or whether it's government taking actions to be able to empower our well-being, you know, whether it's having more art on the street, or whether it's having any of these things. So, you know, there's so much more that we need to do to be able to just give people that lease of life, and also to just rethink things. Because, like I was saying, I guess like everything right now is just so attuned to GDP and to financial profit that it's like, you know, you can have that, but just remember our well-being. So yeah, I think that's the main thing right now, is like, you know, we can't do this individually. It does take a lot more.
Yeah. I think that's a really nice thought, and there does need to be more wide-scale led help from the government, I would suggest, rather than just putting the onus on the individual. So this series, I've been lucky enough to partner with one of my favourite brands, Heights. In an ideal world, we would all eat a diverse, nutritionally complete diet that ensures we meet all of our nutritional requirements. However, if you're anything like me, you'll know that life likes to get in the way, and that's not always possible. That's where Heights and their Smart Supplement comes in as the best insurance policy for looking after me and my brain. The Smart supplement consists of just 2 easy capsules taken every day and has been formulated by neuroscientist Dr. Tara Swart and dietitian Sophie Medlin. The all-vegan capsules are packed with 20 essential vitamins, minerals, antioxidants and healthy fats, which are designed to support your brain, nervous system, immune system, and even your sleep. I personally noticed an improvement in my focus, boosting my energy levels. I'm more motivated than ever on my goals, and I even make it to the gym more often when I take Heights. So if you want to get started with brain care, Heights are giving all of my listeners a 15% off your first quarterly subscription with the code StraightTalking. Head to yourheights.com and use the code StraightTalking and start taking care of your brain and body today. So we've talked quite a lot about society's purpose, but I want to know a bit more about your purpose. What's your why?
That's a big question to just ask like that. What's my why? I think my why has changed a lot over the years. I think for a long time I didn't have a why, and or at least I felt like I wasn't allowed to have my own why. It had to be someone else's, and had to be financially oriented, and had to be all these things. I really believe that there's no point in existing if we're just going to do this all by ourselves. Like, we need other people. We need to be connected to the world around us. And so, I live to serve. Like, I want to help other people. And that has satisfied me for quite a long time, but it's also broken down, because I think I started to live my life through this kind of like, and we have this like kind of selfless narrative that is perpetuated in society, some kind of like, what's it called? Saint. And yeah, I've recently had to realize that actually it's not enough for me to live for other people, you know? And actually, when I was feeling suicidal, so I started feeling suicidal about 3 years ago, and I was working so hard and giving so much of myself and didn't feel appreciated at all, like either financially, like, in terms of connection with others, like, I wasn't seeing like friends and family that much anyway, because I was working all the time. And, I was also in a foreign country. I felt like very disconnected. And, when you're just giving, and also at the time, by the way, mental health was not really a thing. So, yeah, I realized that actually now my purpose is, or my why is, it just has to include myself. It has to include really connecting with myself authentically in this moment, and helping myself, because at the end of the day, nothing else can happen if I'm not helping myself. And so I really see myself as someone creative, and I need to be able to fulfill that. And so right now, and also this one thing came to me once when I was on I think it was like a mushrooms trip or something, but it came to me and it was like, you're a little space explorer. And I was just like, I love that. Like, I'm just always exploring, like whatever space I'm in, whether it's mental or physical, I'm just exploring. So, to be able to explore and to be able to do that with respect, and to also obviously be able to share anything I have to offer. Yeah, the why is now a lot less simple than I live to serve, but
I don't think there should be a simple answer to that question, because it's surely the biggest question of all. What is our why? What's our purpose? And I think it would be too simplistic to really say, for me as well, that I have one why. I think it's a bit of a cliche and it's used a lot, but it's like the aeroplane putting your mask on before you help others. And I think it's really important to take stock of that I'm very similar to you. I think my core values include connection, and they include purpose itself. I have to feel like there is meaning in what I'm doing. But that doesn't have to be one thing. I think helping others is definitely one, but it can be lots and lots of things. And I think over the course of a lifetime, that may change. And I think it would be naive to think that it wouldn't. But yeah, there's a lot of synergy between our answers there for sure.
Well, what's your answer? What's your why?
I mean, I guess I'm sitting on the fence saying that it's finding, my why is trying to find the why, trying to find the purpose. So trying to find some meaning in everything I do. I think connecting with others, I'm drawn to connection. And I spend my life all of the time trying to connect with usually people, but everything really around me. And I think, I would find it very difficult to say that I have one why, because I know that over the next probably 12 months, that will change enormously. I'd like to make a difference in the world. I think that would be quite nice to feel like I've improved the world around me. And I think constant growth. So my other values are growth and consistency. So those four: the growth, consistency, connection, and purpose. And they're the four things that are most important when I put out sort of 8 core key categories for me. And so if I'm chasing those and I feel like my daily actions are amounting to doing things with respect to that, going in those directions, and I feel like I'm kind of getting towards what my why is. And if I do those every day, I feel like all the time I'm finding new and exciting things and things that stimulate me. And at the same time, I'm improving the world around me. So I would try, it's a hard one to summarize, it's a hard question. You flipped it back on me there, but I would definitely say that's probably, as close to a good answer I can do at this point. If you ask me again in 6 months, we'll see where we're at.
See what happens. Well, I was going to say as well, because I was going to ask why consistency, but it feels like you answered that afterwards as being like, if I show up every day, then like, if I do this stuff every day, I find that it does help me feel.
Yeah, and perhaps consistency doesn't necessarily go into defining the why for me, but I know that when I'm consistent with trying to grow, trying to connect, then I feel like I'm achieving purpose. And I can sort of put that as a sentence together. And I like that. That keeps me quite centered. And allows me to see, okay, maybe I'm not feeling too good. Am I doing these things consistently that I know are good for me? Oh, no, I'm not. Maybe I should dip back in and see a friend or try and learn something new or whatever it is in terms of growth, etc.
Definitely.
You're an entrepreneur. You have been for some time. It's a fine balance that we try and run between achieving, success, high performance, finding our why, doing whatever we're trying to do, but also looking after ourselves and looking after our mental health. And they can be a bit of an oxymoron. They compete with each other sometimes because we're told to slow down and not burn out. But sometimes it feels like you're not then doing the things that light your fire. How do you navigate that catch-22?
Firstly, I love that you use the phrase "light your fire" because it sounds like a song from the noughties, but it's also I think it's also very apt because I feel that fire and I know when it's out. And I think we're sort of fed this lie that being an entrepreneur sets you free, and that these incredible people are entrepreneurs and blah blah blah, and I feel like it's given me a lot in terms of the fact that in every single moment I know that it's mine to be able to learn from and make the most of, and it's all on me. But at the same time, like you're saying, when it comes to our well-being, that's also all on me. And so the business and me become kind of competing.
Sure.
So I've had to realize that my business is not me. It's just one tiny little fragment of who I am. And I know, I can't even tell you how many entrepreneurs, I almost want to say 99% of entrepreneurs who are caught in this trap between their business and themselves. And it's really hard to pull yourself out of. I think that, we validate stress and we validate money in such a way that people will burn themselves out to make sure that they are successful, however success is defined. And so yeah, I've had to be really honest with myself about just needing my own time and needing my own space, and knowing that this is my life. This is my one life that I'm going to get. And if I'm going to spend it doing this job, like however, for like, let's say for actually like, all day, and sometimes in the evening, I'm going to think about it, I'm going to do all that stuff. Like, is that my priority? And you just have to keep questioning, like, is it my priority? Is this what I want? And you've got to do that every single day. Like, I remember meeting this entrepreneur who I loved, and he said he would wake up in the morning and ask himself, do I want to do this? Like, and, most people say, like, there's this kind of idea that, like, you have to be so committed and, like, know it. But actually, I think commitment, like, really comes from, at least the truest kind of commitment comes from actually asking yourself and being honest about the answer. So yeah, there are days that I don't want to do anything. And I've only recently started to be like, okay, today is not one of the days that I'm going to be productive. So what am I going to do? Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll go exercise. Maybe I'll go see friends. Maybe I'll find some poetry, or find an art exhibition, or find something that inspires me and rekindles that fire. So yeah, now it's like when things are not quite there, I just can't force it anymore. I've forced it for too long, and I know where that ends up. So I just actually ask myself, what do I need to make myself feel alive right now? Or what do I need to do to help myself right now? And that's what I do. So yeah, and I rest. I try to rest. So
yeah, massively important.
Yeah.
And that can feel really hard when especially the business feels like part of you. It's like your third leg, if you pardon the poor phrase there, but it's it feels like part of you. And so to try and pull yourself away, especially when you've got deadlines and things going on that seem like the most important thing in the world, that can be really difficult. I think there was a really good practical tip in there that you said, that was, you were asking yourself a question: what is my priority? Is that my priority? Is that a priority? And I think you can sort of put that in your day. I think what's a really good tip for anyone that is a busy person is take an extra 10 minutes out of your day to prep and plan, whether it's your day or your week or your month. Get a good diary, whether or not it's your phone. I would suggest a paper diary, and look at what you've got in there. See how you're feeling, take a check-in, be mindful for a few seconds and say, do I need to do all of these things today? Can I bosh those off to the next week or in a few days' time? And that just helps. And if it's no, I heard another good practical tip on this is a traffic light system. Green light, as you have to do this. I think it's my friend Ben West, who's going to be on the podcast this series as well. Green light is that you absolutely are going to do that and it's fine. You have to do it. Amber light is like if you're feeling it at the time. So maybe you check on the Monday and you're a bit too busy, that can get scratched. And red light is like, you don't need it necessarily, only if you really like feeling up to it sort of thing. And just like little practical things like that can really help you just shape your sort of how you're feeling about your week and take some of the pressure off, I think.
I mean, definitely. And just like remembering that you're a multidimensional human being with multidimensional needs, and that those are all equally valid to, work. So
sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As someone who has a fairly clear why, although we said it was quite a complex question to answer, for anyone out there who's listened to us say our whys or has been feeling a little bit lost in terms of purpose recently, do you have any advice for them to try and find their why?
I actually do. And I'm so glad you asked that, because I was going to say it before and then like the chance didn't come and now you've just presented it. So, so kudos to you and being good at what you do. Yeah, I actually, so I had this realization when, like I said, when I became suicidal, and I had this moment where essentially because I had grown up in this, really difficult environment at home. And to get myself through it, I kept saying, there's a reason for it. There's always a reason, and there's a reason why things happen. There's a reason why things happen.
A lot as well.
Yeah.
Comes from my mum.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I always believed it. And in fact, I was so optimistic. I thought everything happens for the best. I was like, everything happens, even all the worst things in the world, they have something to teach us, blah, blah, blah. Everything happens for the best. And so when I became suicidal, I had this moment where I realized that I had this kind of idea of a great wind, which was pushing me along. And it had inspired me in incredible ways to find purpose in everything. But what I realized then was that after going through all of this and after giving so much of myself, the wind was gone. And I looked around and I was like, my God, there is no wind, I was just creating that wind. And in that moment, I realized that actually life has no inherent purpose in and of itself. Things just are the way they are. My household, my family was just toxic. It's not like there was a grander purpose to me being there. So life has no purpose except that which we provide it. So we create the purpose. We find the purpose all the time. We are like purpose machines or purpose magicians, going, creating purpose. Oh yeah, the reason why I tripped over that thing was because of, I needed to see the birds, We
love to put a story on things.
We love
right?
stories.
It's the best way to convey information. If you meet someone who tells you information through a story, you're just captivated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rory Sutherland on The Diary of a CEO is a great person to listen to for that.
Oh, really? I think the thing is that I now no longer buy the stories and I don't buy the purpose. And I think that it's all, and I love science fiction. I love fantasy. I love creativity. I love all of these things. I just think that we also need to be able to see them for what they are. And making friends with reality in that regard is just so important. And so I think knowing that you have the power to create your own purpose is the most important thing. And so you can do that in whatever way you want. And I think that's the most amazing thing. But also just to remember that these stories are things of our own creation. And so, when things don't work out for whatever reason, don't give me any shoulds or woulds or coulds, because reality doesn't have to work that way. We're creating our story, and that's a beautiful thing and a beautiful skill that we have. But at the same time, to recognize that, we're kind of just one thread in this whole tapestry of whatever reality is. And so to accept that those stories can change, and we can change, and we can also find a lot of peace in looking at the stories from afar and saying, wow, that's a beautiful thing, but I don't have to be in it.
You have the power to change those stories, and you also have the power to decide how much weight you give to them. And I think that's really powerful, and something that can give you quite a lot of solace in life, and be quite protective for your mental health. If you realize you're flexible in that, then you're getting towards being bulletproof in some ways, and things will challenge you, of course. You're going to have certain times in your life where things are less stressful. You don't have big life events, and then you have big life events and suddenly you think, oh God, maybe I'm not as bulletproof. Maybe I'm a bit shattered, but you come back and you can tell yourself a different story time and time again. I think that's a great bit of advice. You have given people this idea that there could be a well-being metric, and it would be such a lovely world to live in if we did have that. I want to know, for people out there that are sat listening to this who want to make the world a better place, who sort of heard that idea and thought it was a lovely idea, what action can they take to make the world a better place?
So many. So many. I mean, it doesn't need to be big. I think I like things to be big. Like I like to think as big as possible. And honestly, that really helps me because I don't see any, I just see possibility, and I think that I think a lot of us need to be a lot more just open with our imagination and allowing ourselves to create and think differently and just go down different paths. Why walk around the block the same time every time when you could just go down a different path? And down those paths, you have no idea what there might be. But as long as you're not scared and as long as you have good intentions, I think that they can show really beautiful things. Or even if you are scared, you're allowed to be scared. I think change can be scary. But in answer to your question, I would say just go with what makes you most enthused, invigorated, what really means something to you as well, and tap into that. And so, even if it's like I love that, drama therapy and things like that are becoming really big because I just it's so cool to me. Of course, drama and acting and, getting in touch with personality and character could be really interesting for someone to use from a therapeutic perspective. It's just, of course, but some people like to draw, some people like to, I don't know, some people like to make money. And, you can do that whilst also helping the world. It really doesn't take that much. When you want to help the world, donate 1% of your profits to something that really that really matters, or work with an organization that's that works in mental health, or that works in, I don't know, LGBTQ rights, and do a campaign with them. The possibilities are endless for ways that you can help people, and I think that it's all just about asking yourself, what do you want to do? Because at the end of the day, the thing that you're passionate about most is going to be the thing that's going to keep you going the most. So just tap into your passion and go with that. Yeah.
Great answer. I think for anyone that's struggling to start and it maybe doesn't come naturally to them, I think just try to connect with more people. I think whether or not that's just in your day-to-day life, or reach out to friends you haven't spoken to for a while, but just see what happens when you start to network a little bit more and you put yourself out there. I think it's a really big part of my life and how my life has changed over the last maybe 18 months to 2 years. Suddenly the number of people I speak to on a daily or weekly basis has gone maybe up 10 times.
Yeah.
And it has changed my life. I would say it's a huge thing that someone can do to improve the world around us. How can people find How Mental?
You just go on @HowMental on Instagram and on most platforms, either @HowMental or @HowMental_, and go to www.howmental.com. So, or you can just reach out to me on george@howmental.com. Lots of different ways, all the socials. But I also just want to say on the note of what we were previously talking about, with helping people find their purpose, I think what you said is so important because so many people just don't know where to start, and I feel really grateful that I'm just one of those people that I know what my passions are and I kind of just keep going with them. But I think the other thing is when someone like me comes on a podcast like this and starts talking about it, it sounds like we have it all figured out, and that I just created this thing and I knew that this is what I was going to do. Absolutely not.
Yeah, for sure. Fully agree.
You have to also accept that you have no idea what you're doing, and that you can have an idea and that idea can change. Where a lot of us get stuck when we just want the finished product. We want to know what that final thing is that we're going to do, and then we just don't even allow ourselves to take the first step because we're too scared we're not going to get to the place that we need to be. But the only way you're going to get anywhere is by taking those first steps. So just go work with what you can see. My brother said his therapist came up with a nice analogy. So it's imagine someone climbing a mountain face and they can only see 5 meters ahead. So it's just what is in your 5 meters ahead vicinity, and just work with that because that's all you can do. And going to empower you. So
yeah, spot on. Take action.
Yeah.
Little steps.
Yeah.
So George, we've come towards the end. It's been a great conversation. I usually round up with this question. What is your one best bit of advice for someone looking to improve their health and happiness?
There's so many. Not that, like, I don't know which one is the best, though. Like, I think the best will be for whichever person it is. For me, actually, one of the things that is really important to remember is our mortality, essentially. And I know a bit controversial.
Yeah, here we go.
But yeah, I think it's like I've mentioned it before, like making friends with reality, I think is the most powerful thing, because when we don't, we just suppress and repress all these really difficult things. And so, remembering that we've only got this one life, at least that we know of, and that we need to make the most of it, and we want to be able to, express as much love, express as much understanding, and feel as connected as we can throughout. I think especially like with my parents and with people that I'm close to, like I think that reminder that, like, at some point we're going to die, at some point they're going to die, like that is going to happen. So let's make the most of now. Yeah, that sort of just brings everything down, and also just slows me down and allows me to just embrace this moment. And I think a lot of us struggle to get into the present moment because we're so caught up in all the things we want to do, and the future and the past. And so that really helps me come into the present.
That's certainly a theme that keeps coming up about being present, slowing down, particularly for people that live a busy life, or, just in the fact that the way that the world is now, it's so stimulating that it's dragging us apart from so many different angles, and being able to stop. And yes, you mentioned mortality there, which can put people on edge. And I think we're really poor at talking about death in general. It scares the living daylights out of everyone, and rightly so, of course. But once you do make peace with the fact that we aren't immortal, you can start to really see what's important and take every moment, not for granted. Really, really try and be as present as possible.
Yeah.
I'd usually round up there that, George, you are a secret poet, and I thought it would be really nice if you could maybe finish the podcast off with a few words.
Yeah, for sure. So I really didn't know which poem to go with when you said that I was going to do this, but it's a short poem, and I think it might be why I was wanting to say that as the final tip. So the poem is called "This Moment is Holy." And sorry, I haven't remembered it off by heart, so I'm going to read it. But normally I love to actually know it off by heart. So. This moment is holy. Fear and ecstasy conflate, combine in this moment divine. I know not what the future holds, but it doesn't bother me, for now's the only thing I see. Close your eyes and breathe my sweet. You're here, I repeat, you're here. Follow me through the trees, leaves a parade of pride for you along the path of the forest floor. For your naissance, the essence of life, resides within you, if only you allow yourself to be. Yes, take, give, love, make, dwell, sell, burn, rip, dip, sip, slip, sweep, suddenly free, into the scenery, merging with reality. Or is this all a dream? What more is left for you and me, beyond mortality? You'll see. You'll see.
I'm sure there's some rounds of applause going on as well. George, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. What a way to end.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.